Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. If you've joined us, we're getting things started up. Allow me a second to get things going here. We are recording and posting it on Facebook. It's also going to be posted to YouTube. Those of you who are clicking on, signing on early, reach Hollywood Temple Bethel Shabbat morning program, Shabbat services. We will start at 10:30 and have our guest speaker at 12 noon on the Sephardic Jews, and particularly focusing on the Rhodes community that is here in Los Angeles. Stay tuned. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Daniel's iPad. We're going to be
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We're going to start up in a short while. Just getting people coming on board. Hey, Daniel, you are?
I am Daniel Wenkert, Daniel Ben Yisrael.
And how'd you come on to us? Through
Zoom. You sent out the link.
Oh, okay, very good, very good. Okay, I'm glad you're joining us. So we're waiting. We're going to start up at 10:30, and I'm going to just keep my mic off and the video off too. We're ready to start while people are coming in.
Okay, quick question.
Yes.
How do I rejoin?
Oh, if you get disconnected, so just
No,
open the same
I
link.
meant rejoin the shul in general.
Oh, in general, um, we're just starting up right now. Uh, if you would shoot us an email, then we can get you all the information.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah,
I'll do
you
that.
have the synagogue's email.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. We're going to be doing high holiday services online,
Okay, good.
just to be safe for everybody. I mean, if the city suddenly gives us an okay to get a few people in, maybe we'll be able to do that. But otherwise, it's going to be primarily online.
Okay, sounds good.
And we're going to be sending out information. Very good. Well, I'm glad you joined us. So as I said, I'm going to turn off the volume for right now, or the microphone right now, and we'll just wait for people to join on.
Okay. Shabbat shalom.
Okay, I welcome Joe Alexander this Shabbat morning. And Marcelo's joining on. Okay, very good. Marcelo, Shabbat Shalom. Okay. Jeff, good. Jeff, Shabbat Shalom. And welcome.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom. So I'm going to get started in just a minute or so. People are coming on board. Okay, I put the main sanctuary on our share screen, so if people are coming on until we get started, they know they're in the right place. Otherwise, they would just see a blank screen all this time waiting. So we're going to get started very shortly. Okay. 9, that is welcome. 4439 is it?
Barbara.
Barbara. I should memorize these numbers by now.
Hi, Rafa.
How are you doing? How's
Okay,
everybody?
how are you doing?
Thank God. Managing,
Yeah.
holding up, keeping ourselves busy. That's the main thing. Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
I know. I think it's gonna. I'm watching the numbers, and although it's not pleasant, there's a rate of spread, and the rate of spread is decreasing dramatically. So that if it follows, right now it's a rate of 0.86, which means that it's like every time there's somebody infected, only 86% get a second infection. So what means is you follow the numbers that within a few weeks you'll be down to very, very little, minimal. I would hope that's true.
Well, I hope so, because we have the highest numbers in the nation, from what I understand, in California.
Yeah, but the number rate is not the same as the severity rate, and that's a little bit to help us. I would hope that. Okay, 5080. That is. Okay, we're getting new people coming on board. All right, listen, this is good. We're getting more people coming on board. Let's begin our services. We're getting a crowd here. I'm going to welcome everybody on board Shabbat Shalom. I see Ruby Hannon, Arthur Benveniste. Oh, our guests for today. Welcome. We've got several new faces today. I'm very happy to welcome you. Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to start up.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Okay.
Shalom.
Shabbat services brought to you by Hollywood Temple Bethel. That's our promo. And the theme of this Shabbat is the Sephardic Jewry. When I say Sephardic Jewry, in particular, Spanish, Ladino-speaking Jews, Jews of Spain and Portugal who settled within North Africa, the Ottoman Empire, parts of Holland, the West, and the Americas later on also, and the focus on the Jews of the Greek and Turkish areas, particularly the island of Rhodes. Billy, come on. So I have selected for us the Shabbat special music selections to fit the mood. Let me move these over and get this in place. And we're going to open up with Hallelujah Chorus, which is Psalm 150. This is a version by Lewandowski, major Jewish composer, who adopted the classical and romantic music style. So it's not living. I'm going to correct myself, said Lewandowski. No, I'm sorry. This is a classic Spanish-Portuguese composition presented by the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue in London. Very interesting. Many of the Sephardic synagogues identified themselves, both in the United States and in Europe, as Spanish and Portuguese. So now we're going to go into our service. Just keep your microphones off. That way we will eliminate background noise and be able to listen. And at some points I'll say, come on, join in. Let's, with the Shochen Ad, we'll start up all together. Shochen Ad Marom Bekadosh Shemo Bechatuv Ran Tzadikim Baranai La Yesharim Lava Tehila Befi Yesharim Tehalal Uvebrei Tzadikim Teborach Uvelshan Chasidim Tetramam Uvekeref Kedoshim Tetkahadash Over Markalo, Bibbo, Abet Yisrael, נברך דוד בן שי לך משיחך. And continue now in the middle of this page. Those are the Siddur print editions. We're starting on 338 in the Siddur Sim Shalom and the Shabbat version, page 105. Nishtabah Shimcha Lahad Markeinu Ha'el Nachir V'Kodesh Shmayim V'Aretz Ki Lachan Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avotenu Pirush V'Chaylev B'Zimra Oz V'Mem Netzach L'Gvura Tila V'Tiferet U'Kedusha V'Malchut Berachot V'Hodot Me'ata V'Yad Olam Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Gadol V'Tishbachot Melech Chai Olamim. And now we open up the service with the Baruch Hu, and I go actually not from the Sephardic tradition, but to the Italian tradition. Italian tradition is a little bit different from the Sephardic Spanish tradition, but one of the key composers of this from the Baroque, Renaissance and Baroque period, Salomon da Rossi, Baruch Hu. We'll join in the Baruch Hu in his melody. So let's keep the mics on mute. And we continue in the middle with the blessing, Baruch Atan Mecholom, Yotzer Over Choshech, Oser Shalom Vorei Et HaKol. You can sense the different tone and style. In the Renaissance, the Rossi composed music for the Pope, as well as Jewish music. And we'll continue with El Adom, and this one we can join in. This one is, again, I'm switching traditions. This one from what's called the Babylonian Bavel, maybe the central core, was called Mizrahi, Eastern Jewry, as opposed, distinct from Spanish Jewry. And this is called in the style of makam. Makam is a musical pattern that is repeated, and this one called makam Husseini. This is apparently very popular mode in Jewry of the Middle East, Western Asia. So it's Rabbi Haggai Batsri, who's actually here in Los Angeles, and I've got the words up here for you also.
לא בטובו מלא עולם
Not only is it a nice melody, but he's done a wonderful job in putting visual images that express the theme of nature itself, singing, being one beautiful song of praise to God as the creator of nature. And we continue now with the blessings of the angels, praising God, as envisioned by Isaiah and Ezekiel. We continue to the bottom of the page that I have in front of you, and we can join in. כולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת ובסוף ונאמר קדושה כולם כאחד רמביר הקדוש קדוש קדוש אדוני צבאות מחורץ כבודו ואופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש כאילו מתנסים לעומת צרפים גם שפכים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו לברוך למותיתנו. And to continue in our service, the theme of nature, the wonderment at the order of nature, the night giving way to the dawn. We give praise to God as Yotzeh HaMa'orot, and we pray that there's a new light as well. Creator of light, create light upon your people Israel. Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, v'nizkeh kulanu meher al yaro, Baruch Adonai, Yotzeh HaMa'orot. And now we're going to continue with Avinu Malkeinu, and we're going to, not Avinu Malkeinu, Ahava Rabbah, I'm sorry. And I'm going to invite you to join in, and some of you want to unmute the mic. It's okay. I like once in a while to have in the recording sounds of live people in the background. It makes us all feel good, even if it sounds a little time delayed. Let's all join in. Ava Rabba Ahaftanu Adonai Eloheinu Cher Gedola B'Teira Hamata Aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Avur Avoteinu Shebatu Becha Avinu Malkeinu V'telamdem Chukei Chaim Ken Techanenu Tlamdeinu Avinu Ha'arachamad Amrachem Rachem Aleinu betem belibeinu lehavin lehaskil lishma limod ulelamed lishma velasod olekayem et kol divrei Talmud Torah tehabiahava beha'ereneinu metoratecha v'dahavek libeinu b'mitzvotecha ve'yached lehevavenu li'ahava u'lira et shemecha ve'lo nemosh le'olam va'ed ve'lo nemosh le'olam va'ed ki v'shem kodshecha Agadol v'hanora v'atavnu nagila v'nismecha Hagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha v'havienu l'shalom v'ava potoret v'tolichenu kol memiut le'artzenu Kepoyesho tatavanu v'hatenu v'lashon Keraftanu l'shimcha gadol Sela ve'emet lehodot lecha Uyached b'yahava Baruch atah Adonai Abochei b'maaseh b'yahava. Amen. Okay. I'm going to open up the gallery view. Don't know if it opens up on yours, so you can see that we have who all is joining us here. We have a nice company today, this Shabbat. I'm going to go shrink it down to the side panel. We're going to go into the Shema, and we have the text actually here on the screen with us in the video. It is filmed with the backdrop of one of the traditional Spanish and Portuguese synagogues, kind of chandeliers that were very prevalent in those traditions. And we'll join in the Shema together. And I have it here also for you. I'm going to shrink this down here, move this over here. You can see it with tzitzit in hand. And I'm going to let the cantor here in this audio lead us in the Shema in the Spanish and Portuguese tradition. So we started with El Melech Ne'eman, and we continue.
This is the Shema and the Ve'achafta in the Spanish Portuguese tradition. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושנתן לבניך דיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושופך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך וחיית תותפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
And now we'll continue silently. I'll pull up the page. And we continue now on the bottom of the page. Vayomer Adonai Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'amata lehem v'asu lehem tzitzit al kantei begehem ledorotam v'natnu al tzitzit רק הנח פתיל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו ושחטתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, הייתם קדושים לאליכם. אני, אדוני לכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אדוני אליכם אמת. And we continue with the song of the children of Israel as they pass through from slavery into freedom at the shores of the Red Sea. Hilol Eleha Yom Baruch Hu Mevorach Moshe Uvnei Yisrael Chanu Shirab Simcha Rabba V'Yamru Kulam. Join in Mi Kamocha Ve'elim Adonai Mi Kamocha Nedor HaKodesh Norat Od Sefer Shira Hadasha Shephu Geolim Shemcha Sefat Hayam Shira Hadasha Shephu Geolim Shemcha Sefat Hayam Yachat Kulam Odu Yachat Kulam Odu V'Yimlichu V'Yamim Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed Tor Yisrael, Koma v'Yezek Yisrael, Ibnechenu Mecha, Yehuda v'Yisrael. Yo'aleinu Adonai Tziva'ot Shema, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Adonai Yisrael. Now, going to do the opening of the meter together, the first two blessings. And then the Kedusha, I'm going to let the cantor from the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue in Montreal lead us with the Kedusha. The text of the Kedusha in Sephardic prayer book is different. It's a Musaf Kedusha, actually, and it starts out, Keter Yitnu Lecha. The angels shall give the crown to you, O Lord. And so the introduction is different from the introductions we have, but we'll follow his version. So we're going to start together. Adonai, Sifadai Tiftach, Upi Yagid Ilatecha. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu, V'Elei Avoteinu, Elhei Abraham, Elhei Yitzchak, Elhei Sarah, Elhei Rivka, Elhei Le'achel, Elhei Le'ah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor Ha'nora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim Bekonei Hakol, Zacher Hazdevot, Vigel Ibnehem, Leman Shemo V'Yahava, Melech Uzer Ushia, Uged Ushia Again, Baruch Adonai, Again Abraham, Ufoked Sarah. Ata Gibor de Lamaranai, Mechai Beitim Atar Rav Loshia, Morid Hatal, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayem Eitim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Nochlim Berofech Cholim, O Matir Asurim, O Mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Givurot, Omidot Melach, Elecheni, Omechayeh, Omazmiach Yeshua, Ne'eman Ata L'chayot Meitim, Baruch Adonai, L'chayeh Ameitim.
יתנו לך אדוני אלוהינו מלאכים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כמוד אדוני ממקומו יפן ברחמיו לעמו המייחלים שמו ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד אומרים פעמיים באהבה שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו הוא מושיענו הוא יושיענו ויגאלנו שנית וישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי לאמור הן גאלתי אתכם אחרים כראשית להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם ודברי קודשך כתוב לאמור ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור הללויה
And we continue Baruch Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. And then we can continue silently from the text that I have for you. I'm going to scroll it up. At the bottom, we start Yismach Moshe b'matan chako. Given them המחזה שכינתה לציון, עוד אמנה. כולם יברך, ירמם שמך מכן, אתה נעטוב שמך להודות. And let's join in Sim Shalom together, and just the standard melody that we're used to. on the bottom of the page. I have it up for you. Let's all join in. Sim, 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 shalom. Sim, shalom, tova, uracha, ba'olam. Sim, 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 shalom, tova, uracha. Ein v'chesed v'rachamenu v'al kol Yisrael amecha. Barcheinu avinu kulanu kiyecha v'yor panecha sim 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 shalom tova uracha ba'olam sim 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 shalom tova uracha ki v'yor panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torah Chaim Yafia Chesed Tzedakah Uvracha Verachamim V'Chaim Shalom V'Shalom Sim 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 Shalom Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Ba'olam Sim 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 Shalom Tova Uvracha B'tov b'necha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit u'b'chol shah b'shlomecha sim 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 shalom tova u'bracha ba'olam sim 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 shalom tova u'bracha Baruch Adonai and we're going to go to our selection of study. We're going to open up our gallery view. You can always open gallery view if you want on your end also. You can see all the people who have joined us. Our crowd has grown nicely, and we welcome everybody on this Shabbat morning. I'm going to go back to my single view here. And we're going to go to our selection of study for Shabbat, Pirkei Avot. We're introduced now chapter 2. Chapter 1 was a chain of tradition, trying to establish the authority of the rabbinic tradition, going back from Moses, went generation to generation. And now chapter 2 opens up with none other than the prime authority. I will get this to go back where it was supposed to be. Here we go. To Rabbi. Now, when it says rabbi, that means the rabbi of the Mishnah, the man, the scholar who put it all together for us, and that is Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Rabbi Judah the Prince. He had an official title under the Roman Empire. This is around the year 200. It has been 130 years or so since the disaster of the destruction of Jerusalem, and another 70 or so years since the fall of Bar Kokhba at Beitar. And at this point, the Roman Empire has become very friendly with the Jews. Jews are no longer a military power, no longer threatening the Roman Empire. And it said Rabbi has very good relations with the existing emperor, I think it's Antoninus Pius, at that time also a philosopher emperor as well on his own end. And so the Talmud reports very good conversations between the two, very favorable conversations between the two. So we're introduced to Rabbi, and he has a long series of statements. So we're just going to take the first one of these. Is Ezu derech yishara shivor l'adam? What is the straight path, the right path, the righteous path? And he also translated that way, that a human being should choose. Kol shi teferet le'oseha. That which is an honor to the one who is doing it. In other words, you are the one who is doing the right. You should feel that this is enhancing you. V'tiferet lo min hadam. Also, that which is a beauty attributed to you from other people. In other words, that you must see this as good in your own eyes, and you must see to it that others see what you're doing as something good and beautiful. The word tiferet meaning something exceptionally beautiful, right? So if we want to guide in life, how do we determine ourselves? You have the dry letter of the law. You follow the dry letter of the law, you can still be a no good SMB. I'll say that word, right? Or you can do what's right, but do it in such a way that people appreciate it, that you know that you feel good for what you're doing. So this is a very beautiful concept here for us to follow. Then we're going to go later on and follow more of his, because he's got quite a lot of guidance for us in his statement. We're going to continue with the Kaddish Rabbanan. Give an opportunity, those who are setting the morning's Kaddish, please join in with me as we recite in memory of those whom we love, who are no longer with us. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yama divrach chilutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon, v'yamechon, v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ma galar v'zman kariv imru amen, yehei shmei Rabbah morach le'olam, omer Maya, yibarach v'yishtabach, v'yipa'ar v'yitamam v'yitnasei, v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal, shemei dekucha berichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, v'shbachata v'nechemata, damram v'yamar b'imru amen, al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan, v'al tamidei hon, kol man tamidei hon, v'kol man d'oskim b'raita, di v'ata hadein, v'di v'chol ata v'ata, Elahon elachon shlomo rabba, china v'chisur rachmin, chayin arichin, zamer v'che, pokarim v'karim v'lom de b'shmar b'imru amen, Yei shlomo rabba min shemaya, chayim aleinu v'akoyser b'imru amen, Ose shalom b'imramav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, v'akoyser b'imru amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And again, brought to you by Hollywood Temple Bethel, our sponsor for this Shabbat and all the Shabbat services. Everybody's welcome to participate, to join in, and to help support Hollywood Temple Bethel all this year. And with that, we come to the Torah service. And we'll start. Oh, wait a minute. That is not my Torah service. This is my Torah service. There we go. And let's all join in the Torah service together. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, ein k'masecha, machutcha machut kol olamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'ador, Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai oz l'amo yitein, Adonai yimorech et amo b'shalom, av ha'rachamim etiv v'yitzoncha et Zion, tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, ki v'cha levatat rachnu melech eram v'nisa, Adon Elohim. Vayhi ben Saron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, v'yavutzu oivecha, v'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, u'devar Adonai b'Yerushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo, Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo, Amo Yisrael, v'kirushato. Baruch Shmei Maria Alma, blessed be the name of the Creator of the universe. We continue with the selection from the Zohar, which we accept the teachings of truth, the prophets of truth, and to do God's will. Be'anarachetz v'lishmei kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana amatush bechon. Be'anarachetz v'lishmei kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana amatush bechon. Yehera Kadama, Netifdach libi be'oraita, Betashlim mishalin deli ליבי וליבו לכל עמו ישראל לטעמו חיים ולשמם Amen. And we take our Torah from our figurative ark and we join in the Shema. Repeat after me, the Shema, the Echad, and then together in Gadlut. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Kadosh Shemo.
And together, Gadol Adonai Unaron Shemo Yachdo. And we march Lecha Adonai Gadol V'Hagevura V'Tiferet V'Netzach V'Hod Ki Choho B'Shamayim U'Haaretz Ki Choho B'Shamayim U'Haaretz Lecha Adonai Ha'Mamlacha V'Mitnaseh V'Chol Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu L'Adam Ra'yav Kadoshu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu L'Hakadoshu Yikadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Okay, and now we come to our Torah reading, the portion of Re'eh. And it opens up with words that are really very appropriate coming up to the high holidays. And we later on, at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, we have the same idea, which is, Hare Re'eh. Look, I give you a blessing and a curse. What are you going to get? Depends what you do. You get the blessing if you follow the commandments. If you don't, you get the short end of the stick. All right? That's how it goes. Maybe it's the long end of the stick. If you fall away from the wayside, and later on, at the end, it will tell us, I give you this day, blessing and a curse, you shall choose life. So in order to do this now, we have at this portion a summation. This actually acts as a summation to all that is preceded, really, which is Moses' speech to the children of Israel, preparing them for entry, which he warns them of what has gone wrong in the past and what they must do to keep things straight. And he wraps it up with this choice. And then it says, you shall create a ceremony. And we're going to have more about it later on, about this ceremony. When you come to the land, you then set up a great assembly at two mountains that are in the central northern part of Israel. Next to it is today Nablus, biblical Shechem. And near there are two mountains, one Har Gerizim and Har Eval. Gerizim is a sacred mountain to the Samaritan Jewish community who claimed that the first sanctuary was there, and it never lost its sanctity to Jerusalem. So they look at that, the bracha on Har Gerizim, the blessing on Har Gerizim. How did it come about that the mountains, one was blessed and one was cursed? So it turns out that one mountain, Gerizim, gets all the rain, and because of the position of the other mountain, Eval, somewhat to the north of it, the rain doesn't fall. So you look at the two mountains and say, green, dead. So it's very easy to make that visual when you're standing upon the two mountains. And so later on, we'll have a discussion at the end part of Dvarim about how that ceremony is to take place. And then we come now, we'll move on down into chapter 12, and we'll see, we come now into summation of laws. So the next several portions of the Torah will deal with the laws of entering into the land of Israel, preparing the Jewish people for existence and new life on the land of Israel. So the first thing is to clear away all symbols of idolatry and wipe them away. I hate to say it, but it's similar to what we saw in Afghanistan when the Taliban blew up the Buddhist statues. So, but Jews don't go up blowing up idols. So interesting, we have a lot of statements in the Torah that are very absolutist, and yet Jews aren't absolutists. And what has happened is that as we come from the biblical tradition, which is preparing us to clean out, to the rabbinic tradition, which is telling us we have to deal with mixed populations and accepting what are the populations among us. And so when one of the great rabbis, while the temple is still standing, also goes to take a bath in the Roman bathhouse, and there are statues there, and his colleagues say, how are you going to take a bath in the presence of these idols? And he says, are those idols there? What are those idols there for? They're for me to have fun and enjoy. They're beautiful. So I'm not there to worship them. They're there to worship me. They're there to benefit me. Huh? It all depends how we look at it. The same thing with idol worship. The rabbis came to the decision that idol worship itself is in and of itself not evil for other peoples. That each nation has the tradition of its ancestors. And we're not to deny them that. We have ours, right? It's a very different position. It's different, certainly from Christianity and Islam, but we can do it because we're a people-based religion. We talk about what's for ourselves. Then we try to live in such a way that it becomes a pattern or path for other peoples, but we don't need to impose our specific views then as a result, right? Very different thing, very different from the literal text. So with that, let's go back to the beginning. And Joe Ben Lulu,
Yes.
the cantor that I've selected here, and I have a few other selections, also Ben Lulu. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know if Ben Lulu is specifically Moroccan name or if it's found in other locations. I don't know.
Could be Tunisian too.
Tunisian also, certainly the North African. Right. Yeah. Okay. So he mixes traditions also in his, and you'll see, I'll show you something. He mixes the traditions. And we're going to continue with Ray, and you're all set. Go ahead. Joe, let me ask Joe.
Alexander.
Joe, our patriarch. Joe Alexander, if you'll lead the blessing of the Torah for us, and then we'll do the reading on our behalf.
Baruch Baruch Adonai melech haolam, asher b'chabonu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu es torusoi. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Go ahead.
Amen. Re anochi noten lifnechem hayom beracha uklala et haberacha asher tishmeu el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom ve'akelala im lo tishmeu el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem וסרתם מן הדרך אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום ללכת אחרי אלוהים אחרים אשר לא ידעתם, והיה כי יביאך אדוני אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר אתה בא שמה לירשתה, ונתת את הברכה על הר גריזים ואת הקללה על הר עיבל, הלא המה בעבר הירדן אחרי דרך מבוא השמש, בארץ הכנעני היושב בערבה מול הגלגל אצל אלוני מורה, כי אתם עוברים את הירדן לבוא לרשת את הארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיכם נותן לכם, וירשתם אותה וישבתם בה, ושמרתם לעשות את כל החוקים ואת המשפטים אשר אנוכי נותן לפניכם היום.
Shakach. Thank you very much for the reading. And We invoke prayer for those who are ill. We pray, Mishaberach Avotenu Abraham Yitzchak Yaakov, Sarif Garachev Leah, may the Holy One who blessed Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal Esther Elisheva, Pinchas Betaskovsky, Miriam Leodorf, Yefta Ben Galina, Marcy Kelchik, Mindy Levins Pfeiffer, Jennifer Levins, Ronnie Duran, Harriet Levins, Moise Ben Manya, Barbara Mormon, Esther Gerson, Alexander, Robert Drato, Roger Rosen, Rachel Flavo, Jenny Drato, Michael Schinder, Susan Tuchman, Shirley Marco, Fira Feinberg, Judy Alkalai, Richard Zeller, Carmen Fraser, Liva Batsara, Hannah Batsara, Eliyahu Ben Chava, Shoshana Bat Chava, Herb Moorman, Irina Hosepian, Alex Trebek, Hannah Sar Leah Bat Rachel, Shimon Meir Ben Rachel, Hannah Sar Bat Kayla Alta, Ellen Whalen, and Hai Arnesti. Please go ahead and tell me names of anyone else that you want added in the prayers. You can just
Perez
call it
Badina.
Perez Badina.
Rachel Ventura.
Rachel Ventura. And Joe, go ahead. Alexander.
Esther Rachel Batsiva.
Esther Rachel Batsiva.
David Mordcha Ben Yehuda Noah.
David Mordcha Ben Yehuda Noah.
Sima Harlev.
Sima Harlev.
Rami Ter Harlev.
Rami Ter Harlev.
Susan Feinberg.
Susan Feinberg.
And Sharon Lipman.
Sharon Lipman. Anyone else?
Esther Ashkenazi.
Esther Ashkenazi.
Judith
Wendy Keller.
Judith
Goddesville.
Goddesville. And Wendy Keller.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other names?
Tito and Gabi Gorodisha.
Tito and Gabi Gorodisha.
And Charlene Wilson.
Charlene Wilson. So for all of them, we pray. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yishlach Lahem Refuat Shleima Refuat Nefesh Refuat Haguf Shabbatim Elizok Hashavagam Kurila. Amen. Speedily and in our time. And and we go to Debbie Friedman to lead us everybody be well and healthy at this time. We go quickly to our Haftarah. Again, we're in the theme of consolation, and Isaiah Yeshayahu looks at this poor, distressed woman. That is the vision that he has of the children of Israel. And he says, who is uncomforted, I, God, speaking as God, will lay your foundations as puch. In the English translated as carbuncles, which I understand is an old English word for very precious stones, maybe diamonds, I'm not sure what. Because the next one says, Avnech satich basapirim, and I make your foundation of sapphires. So it is a list of compensating for all the great loss. Now it would be even better, founded on diamond and sapphire, something bright and all your children. Here's a great word also that we have in here. It says, Kol banayich limudei Adonai, Rav Shalom Alech. All your children shall be the students of God. In terms of the scholars of God. They're going to seek God, study God, and then great shall be the peace of your children. This makes the phrasing of one of the prayers that is usually recited right before the Aleinu, which we actually don't do, but it's in the Siddur. You'll see it there. About not only scholars, your children become your bonaich, they become your builders. Interesting my words. And continues with this promise of no weapon shall ever damage you again. All those who are thirsty, come and drink the water of Torah, right, of teaching. So this is the consolation we have, this promise of hope that we add all the weeks up till the high holidays. So I'm just going to chant the first few lines. Anya Sara lo nuchama hine anochi marbitz papu chavanayich saratich lasapirim samti kat kodshim shotayich sharech lavnei ekdach ugvulech lavnei chefetz kol banayich limi Adonai Rav Shalom banayich בצדקה תכונני רחקי מעושק כי לא תיראי ממחיתה כי לא תקרב אליך הן גור יגור אפס מאותי מגר איתך עליך ייפול הן אנוכי בראתי חרש נופח באש פחם מוציא כלי למעשר ואנוכי בראתי משחית לחבל כל כלי יוצא עלייך לא יצלח כל לשון תקום איתך למשפט תרשיעי, זאת נחלת עבדי, ארוני צדקתם ביתי, נאום ארוני. How we come back, we're going to start to wrap up our service, prayer for the country, prayer for Israel, and then the blessing for the new month also that's coming upon us. Let's recite this together, prayer for our country, join in with me together. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country and for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise justice and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all the affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creature of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge in common bond in true harmony to banish hatred and bigotry, to safeguard the ideals of free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land under your province be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen. And this has been a dramatic week for Israel. The United States managed to put together, or at least give its blessings to, something that probably the Israelis did together with Qatar, not Qatar, forgive me, for Qatar. It is United Arab Emirates. And we're going to fly Emirates whenever El Al is not flying. This is the third in a line of countries with formal treaty of peace with Israel. Apparently, 2 others in the Gulf are coming on board very shortly. And Prime Minister Netanyahu used his playing card very well, suspended annexation. And now the pressures on the Palestinians to finally come to their senses, come work out a final deal. If not, they're going to find themselves abandoned completely. Certainly in the Sunni world, and they're part of the Sunni world. And they're not going to find much consolation from the Shiite world in compensation. So we pray for the people of Israel. May this really be the harbinger of something very significant to come. We join in. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim Tzur Yisrael V'Galo Borech et Medinat Yisrael, Sheyitzmecha Gulatenu, Hagen Hagen Aleha, Ebrat Bebrat Chazdecha, Ufros Aleha, Sukat Sukat Shilomecha, Shlachacha B'mitcha, Roshel Sareh V'yatzeha, Taknim Beitzah Tova Milfanecha, strengthen the hand of those who defend our holy land. Avinu Sheba Shamayim, to Yisrael V'Galo, bless this land with peace, its inhabitants with everlasting joy, and let us say, Amen. And now we come to the new month this week. We'll see the new month of Elul. Give me a second. I'm going to enlarge the screen for us a little bit. You'll see it better. I have the prayer for the new month here on the screen. And I'm going to do this very simply because I want to be able to move on to the rest of our program, which is coming up shortly. So we announce, for blessing, good and blessing. A long life. Life of peace. Life of goodness. Life of blessing. Parnasa, life of income. A life of physical strength. The life of the awe of heaven and the fear of sin. Life free from disgrace and shame. A life of prosperity and honor. A life of love of Torah and the awe of heaven. A life in which all our wishes shall be fulfilled for good. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. And we chant in here the announcement. Mishas Anisim, Mishas Anisim, Nisim Lavotenu, Mishas Anisim, Mishas Anisim, Nisim Lavotenu, Galotami Abdut Lecheru, Yegalotami Bekarov, Ikabet Nirachenu Me'ava Kanfot Haaretz, Haverim Kol Yisrael, Haverim Kol Yisrael, Haverim Kol Yisrael Omar, Amen. Rosh Chodesh Elul. Yeh b'yom Hamishi or b'yom Shishi haba aleinu v'akol Yisrael tova. The month of Elul will be this Thursday and Friday. May it be good for all of Israel and all of us. And let's say Amen.
Amen.
And we declare the Holy One shall renew this month for us for life and peace, happiness and joyousness, salvation and comfort. Yechadesheo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Aleinu ve'al kol amor Beit Yisrael l'chaim u'l'shalom l'sason u'l'simcha l'yeshua nechama v'nomar Amen.
Amen.
And now we return the Torah to the ark. And again, I'm going to have the help of the cantor from the congregation in Montreal singing. And this one is in the style of Egyptian Jewry. So again, it's different. And each community had a very different style. So this one is Egyptian style. So we'll start out together with the Hallelujah, and then he'll pick up for that from them. Yalalu Hashem Adonai, Kiniskav Shemo Levado, Hodo Leretz Mishamayim, Vayarem Keren Le'amo, Tehila Lechochasihidav, Livnei Yisrael Am Kerovo, Hallelujah, Hallelujah.
David, Havul Adonai, Bnei Elim, Havul Adonai, Kavod Va'oz, Havul Adonai, Kavod Shemo, Ishtahavul Adonai, בהדרת קודש. קול אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד ירים אדוני על מים רבים, קול אדוני בכוח. קול אדוני בהדר, קול אדוני שובר ארזים. וישבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון, וירקידם כמו עגל. לבנון וסריון כמו בן רמים, קול אדוני חוצב להבות אש, קול אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש. קול אדוני יחולל איילות, ויחשוף יערות, ובהיכלו כולו מרכבות, אדוני למבול ישב. וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום.
We continue now together. Eitz Chayim hi lemachazikim ba tzon checha neusha derachecha v'chol netivotecha shalom ashir ve'enu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Kadesh Yameinu Okay, and now I've got so many musical selections. I want to be able to get to wrap up our service so we have plenty of time for our speaker because we have so much beautiful material. So we're just going to do Inki Eloheinu together and Aleinu together, and then I'm going to go and do beautiful Adon Olam. I'll play that one for you from here. So let's join in. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kemokeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Cheloheinu, Mi Chadoneinu, Mi Chemakeinu, Mi Chmoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adoneinu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonai, Baruch Akeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Ato Eloheinu, Ato Adoneinu, Ato Akeinu, Ato Moshienu, Ato Shekiru Avoteinu, Lefanecha Torah Hasamim. And we join Aleinu together. Aleinu l'shameach v'teikenu l'otzeya b'reishit shelo sadekei haratzot v'lo samanut mishpachot adama shelo samchakenu karnem v'gar aleinu k'chol amotam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויסר הארץ משה מקרוב השמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו לגבי מרומי ואלוהינו אינו אממכנו בסודתו ככתוב בתורתו ידעת היום והשמות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא אלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחתינו עלינו. We're going to conclude here the formal service with the Kaddish. We recall those who passed away this year, Harry Kyle. And this is the yahrzeit this week of Mark Feinberg and Miriam Grust. And the memories be for a blessing. May the souls bound up in the bond of eternal life. And the Mornis Kaddish I've put up on the screen in front of us. Those who are reciting, please join with me. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabba, Yama Divra Chirutei, Yamich Malchutei, B'chayechon, V'yamechon, L'chayedechon, Beit Yisrael, Bagal Zman Karibim Ramei, Yehi Shmei Rabban Borach, Yalam U'Ne'amaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, Yipa'ah, Yishmam, Yitnasei, Yitadar, Yitaleh, Yithalal, Shemei Dekudsha, Berichu, Le'elam Minkol, Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'mechamata, Namiram Gama, V'ramein, Ayisrael, V'arabanan, V'atamidehon, Kol Tamidei, Tamidehon, our Kol Man, Daskim Baraita, Div Avda Hadein, V'div V'chol Akar V'akar, Elahon V'lechon, Shlom Arabach, China V'chisa Rachmim. So I'm going to go ahead down to the middle page. B'chaim Tovim, Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya, B'chaim Aleinu V'Koyse B'Ramein, Ose Shalom B'Mrama, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Koyse B'Mru. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, and we'll now wrap up. But for this, I have a music selection. I said I don't want to pass it over completely. What I'm going to do, because I pulled out some other things, I have a playlist that would be called Sephardic Music, and you'll see some very beautiful choral compositions on this. So right now, again, from the Montreal Synagogue.
It gives me a feeling of High Holy Days.
Oh, yeah, one of them will be, you'll follow it. It is their Oleinu, and it is the same as our High Holidays
Shalom,
Oleinu.
everyone. Amidst...
I thought so.
Yeah, but I'm going to start with this. Just Adon Olam, we're going to end it with this one. A very beautiful chant, straight chant by Isaac Levy. Adon Olam. Sorry. with this, I'm going to do stop share and welcome everybody here. This is our, this is now the third in our series of Who Are the Jews? We started one with a general review of the history of the Ashkenazic and Sephardic Jews as DNA tests show up. And then last week was Iranian Jews. Now I'm glad to introduce Arthur Benveniste, who is here on my screen, up in my top left corner. You may see him on a different side than your screen. And he's going to do a presentation for us. I'm going to start off with a clip that he had sent me from a man who had actually been a member of my congregation for a short time in our previous congregation, going back many, many years in Whittier, about 40 years ago. And he put together a beautiful compilation of the story of the Sephardic Jews, Song of the Sephardi, and then I'm going to take it over from there. We're going to follow up next week, Joe Ben Lulu, about the Jews of North Africa, focus on Morocco, and I'm going to take it from there with the Jews of Yemen, because I've got an inside track on that through my wife. And then Carmen, I'm going to give you lots of thanks because Carmen's been in touch with the Jewish community in Jamaica. And so coming in December, we're going to have a special Shabbat, and we'll try to connect with them live to do this. So that's what's coming up. I'm going to pull this one.
It's not December, it's in September.
September. I'm getting my months mixed up. It's high holidays. That's getting me mixed up. What can I tell you? Thank you. We'll get high holidays straight also. I'm going to pull this one up. I'm going to start this clip. Okay. I should not rush to close down when I'm ready. Take me right away to what I want to do. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull this up. Bear with me, please. Enlarge the screen here. You'll have a better view. And we're going to play just the first few minutes of this.
In the same month in which their Majesties Ferdinand and Isabella gave me the order to undertake my expedition of discovery to the Indies, in the same month they issued the edict that all Jews should be driven out of the kingdom and its territories.
Thus began the diary of Christopher Columbus. As he set sail on his epic voyage of discovery, he observed numerous ships carrying Jews that were leaving Spain. 1492 marked the beginning of a new era in the West. But for the Jews of Spain, it was the end of what had once been a glorious period. For nearly 800 years, the Muslims had occupied Spain. In the 10th century, Jews and Moors working together would forge a civilization centered in the city of Cordova that would be unequal in its time for its learning and for its architectural magnificence. The Muslims call Spain Al-Andalus. The Jews of Spain call it Sepharad. Thus the Jews of Spain were called Sephardim or Sephardim. As Arabic civilization flourished, so did that of the Sephardim. Talmudic academies were established. Translations of Greek classics were undertaken, as were investigations into science, mathematics, and astronomy. It was an era of intellect and of aesthetics, an era that witnessed the flowering of Hebrew poetry into forms and styles rivaled in literary brilliance only by the prophets of biblical times. Poet-philosophers such as Yehuda Halevi and Solomon ibn Gabirol were among those who created an era that would come to be called the Golden Age of Hebrew literature. The best Jewish and Muslim minds were occupied by a renewed interest in Greek philosophy and by their attempts to reconcile it with their religious beliefs. In Cordova arose the greatest Jewish thinker of his time, Moses ben Maimon, or Maimonides as he is called, who single-handedly codified all of biblical and rabbinical law in a series of monumental works. His influence upon future generations was such that it would be said, "From Moses to Moses, there arose none such as Moses." The Golden Age came to a close in the mid-12th century, when fanatical North African Muslims called Almohades raged through Andalusia, forcing Islam upon all in their path. The famed school of Jewish translators in Cordova was forced to flee to Toledo, which had fallen into Christian hands. Toledo had been declared the capital of Christian Spain, and the city soon became the new cultural center of Jewish life. Its synagogues were designed in the popular Mudehar style, and were constructed by the finest artisans and craftsmen of their day. The Muslims, despite all their accomplishments, were unable to prevent the Christians from reconquering the Iberian Peninsula. By the early 13th century, the Christians had reconquered all of Spain, except for the Moorish kingdom of Granada. The Spanish Jews integrated themselves as best they could into the fabric of the newly dominant Spanish society. Spanish became in time the language of the day, and the Jews became imbued with the spirit, the customs, and the songs of their Christian neighbors. But the religious differences between Jew and Christian seemed unbridgeable. Fanatics aroused the Christian populace to riot against the Jewish unbelievers in their midst. In the year 1391, beginning in the Juderia or Jewish quarter of Sevilla, and spreading from there to many of the cities of Spain, a series of massacres occurred, resulting in the death of thousands of Jews, and in the forced conversion of over 100,000 Jews to Christianity. Many of these forcibly converted Jews continued to practice their Jewish religion in secret. These secret Jews were called Marranos. In the year 1480, the Inquisition was established in order to find and punish these Marranos, outwardly Christian, inwardly Jews, who after they had been denounced and turned over to the Inquisition, were interrogated and tortured in order to obtain a confession. After sentence had been passed on their souls, the Inquisition arranged for a mass spectacle called an auto da fe, at which the transgressors were publicly humiliated, strangled, or burned at the stake. By 1492, as the last Muslim stronghold at Granada surrendered to the combined forces of Ferdinand and Isabella, the Edict of Expulsion was declared, ordering the Jews to either accept Christianity or to leave Spain. The reason? The Jews encouraged the Marranos to be disloyal to Christianity. About 150,000 Jews were thus forced to evacuate Spain. The Sephardim, broken-hearted, their wealth confiscated, their communities in shambles, their sea vessels of escape attacked and plundered by pirates, were dispersed throughout the Mediterranean. The great majority of the exiles settled in the Ottoman Turkish Empire, which welcomed the Sephardim in their search for a place of refuge. It was for the Spanish Jews a time to rebuild, a time to heal the wounds of persecution and of expulsion. Istanbul, previously known as Constantinople, came to have the largest Sephardic community in the Ottoman Empire. In this bustling city on the shores of the Bosphorus and next to the Sea of Marmara, the Spanish exiles made use of the commercial and industrial skills that they had acquired in Spain. Some were craftsmen, others physicians. A few were statesmen who distinguished themselves in the court of the Sultan. Many were merchants in the great Turkish bazaar, where they marketed their goods. The great majority, however, were common people. The Jews of Istanbul were organized as a self-governing religious and administrative community called a millet, as was the practice of minorities everywhere under the Turkish system of rule. Their religious life was guided initially by some of the greatest Jewish scholars from Spain, and later by successive generations of talented leaders, among them the community's chief rabbi called the Hacham Bashi. In their public and private lives, they continued to make use of the Spanish that they had brought with them from Spain. Over the centuries, thousands of books in Judeo-Spanish, written with the use of Hebrew letters, would be printed on a wide variety of subjects. The greatest literary work of this community was written in Judeo-Spanish. It was called the Me'am Loez, a monumental 15-volume interpretive work of biblical and rabbinical literature. It was begun in the 18th century and required several decades and authors to complete. In the 19th century, Istanbul had an active Ladino or Judeo-Spanish press. However, in the early 20th century, Jews were forced to write Ladino with the use of the Roman alphabet instead of with Hebrew letters. This happened during a period of extensive social upheaval in Turkey, a period of intense nationalism that witnessed the loss of the community's independence, forcing many Sephardim to emigrate to Europe, to North and especially to South America. After World War II, the majority of the Turkish community immigrated to the newly formed state of Israel. However, the pride of the Sephardim, the Sephardic mother city par excellence, was a town in northern Greece called Thessaloniki, or Salonika. 20,000 Sephardim had settled there immediately after the expulsion, and the community had grown to 70,000 by this century. Many of its 30 Sephardic congregations were named after the region in Spain from which the exiles had come: Aragon, Castile, Catalonia, Provençal. It was renowned as the greatest Sephardic center of Jewish learning and scholarship. Throughout the streets of Salonika, one could hear the Judeo-Spanish of old being spoken. At weddings and other festive occasions, the traditional ballads or romances would be sung. Even its common workers added to its renown and fame. Indeed, because many of the stevedores in the port of Salonika were Sephardim, it was until recently the only seaport in the Mediterranean that closed down on the Sabbath. Salonika was truly a Sephardic jewel to behold. It is no more. The entire community was destroyed by the Nazis in World War II. Another Sephardic community that met its fate at the hands of the Nazis was that of Holland. Here to Amsterdam in the 16th and 17th centuries had come many Spanish, Portuguese, Jewish families. Among the many Marranos who had been able to escape from the long arm of the Inquisition. In Holland, the Sephardim were able to practice their religion openly, a freedom that they had been denied in Spain and in Portugal. The prayer halls and the homes of the Spanish-Portuguese Jews radiated an intensity and a glow of religious life that had been born of their struggle against the Inquisition. It was an elite community, with a literary and cultural life equal to anything produced in Madrid and Lisbon. Amsterdam became the publishing center for Hebrew and Spanish books, an activity that, along with its cultural life, earned it the name of the Dutch Jerusalem. Paradoxically, one of the products of this community was the brilliant Baruch Spinoza, regarded as the father of modern philosophy. Spinoza's heretical religious beliefs and philosophical views resulted in his excommunication. Among the members of the Amsterdam community were merchants active in the Dutch West India Company, merchants who were responsible for allowing the first Jews to settle in the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam, later to be called New York. Sephardim were thus the first Jews to arrive in America. The Sephardic communities of Amsterdam, of Salonika, and of others such as Monastir and the island of Rhodes had been totally destroyed. What was left of the Sephardic world after the Nazi Holocaust was weakened even further by the mass uprooting and migration of Sephardic communities that took place afterwards. The Judeo-Spanish world of the Sephardim is withering away. It was a world rudely transplanted from the soil of Spain onto foreign terrains, where regardless of the surrounding circumstances, it had taken root and prospered and maintained its distinctive Hispanic identity until modern times. This is the story of two of the last strongholds of the Sephardic tradition, and of the song of Spain that they have preserved to this day. This is the song of the Sephardi.
Okay, Arthur. Now I'm going to put up your presentation. I'm going to put it up, and you'll just tell me when to move the pages, and I'll move the pages. You want to introduce yourself to our audience here? Oh, open your mic. Open your mic. There we go.
First, I have next to me a librik and a jizveh, which every Sephardic home had to have. With this, you made Turkish coffee. With this, you drank the Turkish coffee. And this is made by a potter, a famous pottery in Rhodes. It goes way back in history and is rather valuable to us. Anyway, before I get into my notes and my presentation, the film you just showed, I want to make a few comments about it. David Raphael, who made the film, I knew rather well. He passed away just a few months ago in Israel. And I was working with his son. His son lives way out in the San Fernando Valley. This year is the 100th anniversary of our synagogue. And his son and I were working on a video made from excerpts of some of the videos that I had been making. We had planned to have a series of programs at our synagogue in honor of our centenary. Well, as you figured out, they were all canceled because of this corona thing. But anyway, I was working with his son not long ago on something that we're not going to use now. Anyway, let's get into
I'm going to do this. I'm going to mute everybody's microphone. And 1 second. And I'm going to unmute yours.
Wait, so, one more little item.
You're the speaker.
In the film you just saw, they mentioned in 1391 how the Spanish began their attacks on the Jews and forcibly converted them. He didn't mention that the Spaniard who led those attacks on the Jews was named Vicente Ferrer. He went into the synagogue in Toledo, forcibly converted the people, took over the building, made it into a church. No Jewish services were held in that church until 1992, the 100th anniversary of the expulsion, and I was present for a Tisha B'Av service there.
Wow.
But what happened to the reputation of Vicente Ferrer? He was made a saint known as San Vicente, and we have a street in Los Angeles named for him. And just a few weeks ago, I put something on Facebook mentioning all the movement we have now to tear down Confederate statues and such. And I thought, isn't it time to change the name of this street? And a whole lot of people agreed with me. So anyway, let's go on with this.
So I'm going to open share screen. And okay, we're going to close this down and go now to presentation. And I'm going to slideshow. And from the beginning.
Okay, let's go to the first.
It's all yours.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. There we are. Okay, I was in elementary school, I think the 6th grade. The teacher stood before the class and said, today we're going to learn some Spanish. And I thought, great, I already speak Spanish. This is going to be easy for me. Then the teacher said something that puzzled me. She said the letter J is pronounced like an H. For example, hijo, hija, mujer, which is the way you learned it when you studied Spanish in school. I thought, wait a minute, that's wrong. It's hijo, hija, mujer. She doesn't know what she's talking about. So I ignored the rest of the lesson. Next slide. The next slide, okay. I went to high school, joined AZA. I was told there was a club for Jewish boys named AZA. I found it, joined it. I figured I'd find a lot of guys that could speak our funny kind of Spanish. Nobody knew Spanish. They all spoke something I never heard of called Yiddish. And I was puzzled. Next slide. Okay. So where did all this come from? Let me go through a little bit of the history first, and then towards the end, I'll talk to you more about our culture and such. The film mentioned that 1492, Jews were expelled. Jews were given the option either leave Spain or convert to Catholicism. The scholars disagree on the number of Jews involved. It may have been 100,000, maybe 50,000, maybe 200,000. We think the largest number went to Portugal. A whole lot went to Morocco. But the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire sent a ship and sent a bunch of the Jews over to the Aegean Sea. And they settled, some of them is in Bulgaria, most in Macedonia. And the word Macedonia includes the northern part of Greece, also in Serbia. Salonika, which is in the Greek Macedonia, was the largest one, a lot in Izmir, Istanbul, and in 1528, the Turks had conquered the island of Rhodes in 1522, and the Sultan wanted to enhance the economy of the island. So what better way to enhance an economy than to bring in some Jews? So in 1528, he took 40 Jewish families from Salonika and settled them on the island of Rhodes. And my father told me that he thinks we lived in our house for 400 years. So that fits. Next. Next slide. Okay, here's a map of the main settlements around the Aegean Sea. I've circled 4 of them. On the left is Salonika, Istanbul, which then was called Constantinople, or Constantinopolis, up in the upper right. Down towards the middle is Izmir in Turkey, and down at the bottom is the island of Rhodes, which today it's a Greek island, but at that time it was part of the Ottoman Empire. In 1912, the Italians took it, and that was the first time aircraft were ever used in war. And the first time my father ever saw an airplane was when the Italians came to bomb Rhodes. Next. So let's bring them to Los Angeles now. The first Sephardic Jew in the city of Los Angeles was Salomon Nunez Carvalho. And notice how Carvalho is spelt with an L-H-O instead of a double L. And that is the way the Portuguese pronounce it. In Spanish, it would be a double L. He was a painter and a photographer, descended from Portuguese Jews. He first came out here with the John C. Fremont expedition in the 1940s. And that's John C. Fremont and his group that took over California. And when during the Mexican War, when the Americans came out to conquer California, they found that California had already seceded from Mexico, and Fremont welcomed them. He was the first photographer in Los Angeles, and this is kind of remarkable. Los Angeles was a little village way off at the end of the world. Photography was only invented in 1839, and here we are about 15 years later. We already have a Sephardic, photographic studio in Los Angeles. He helped form the Hebrew Benevolent Society, which still exists. It's now known as the Hebrew Home, or the Hebrew Home for the Aged, I think. Anyway, next photo. We'll jump up to the 20th century. There weren't too many Jews of any kind in Los Angeles until just about the turn of the century. In 1912, a group of Jews, both Ashkenazi and Sephardic, there were so few of them that there weren't enough for one Sephardic or one Ashkenazi synagogue. And they had the Shalom. The Sephardics formed their own La Comunidad Sephardi de Los Angeles. And they formed it in order to have burial plots. Next. Oh, by the way, their dues were 10 cents per week, which are a little less than what you're paying in your synagogue. Not only did we speak a different dialect than the Mexican Spanish and the Castilian Spanish, within the Sephardic community, we spoke different dialects. The Macedonians from Salonika, Monastir, they would put an F in front of a lot of words. They say fazer, fijo, fija. We used to make fun of them for that. On Rhodes, we have the odd habit of if a word ends in O, we make it a U. We say iju, and they make fun of us for that. They think we're low class. We have a whole lot of Greek and Turkish words in our language. My grandchildren call me papu, which is Greek for grandfather. Next. Okay, soon the Sephardic groups had to split up. We had all these slightly different accents, so the Rhodes community split off in 1917. Wait a minute. Okay. The Rhodes community split off from the others in 1917. The ones from Salonika and Istanbul formed a synagogue in 1920, and a few years after that, the group from Izmir split off. Next. Okay, 1917, the Jews from Rhodes. They formed what was originally called the Peace and Progress Society, and they were located on Crocker Street, except that we spoke English with a Sephardic accent, so we pronounced it Crockett Street. Later, they reorganized, changed the name, and built a building called the Sephardic Hebrew Center. At first, they rented spaces in other synagogues or theaters. On one of the early documents, I saw that they, for a while, rented the Burbank Theater on Main Street in Los Angeles. When I grew up, the Burbank Theater was a burlesque house. So I expect that in the early days, it was something else. Finally, 1935, they built a synagogue on 55th and Hoover. This is a photo of it. Today, it is a African AME church. Some years ago, they let us hold a reunion there. It was dedicated in 1935. My father says he took me there when I was 1.5 years old, and I wet the seat. When I went back for our reunion, it looked like the seat was clean, so we're all right. Next slide. Okay, here's a photo from the 1930s of a Talmud Torah class. Rabbi Mizrahi is there in the back, on the left side, not quite in the back. I didn't know it at the time, but he was a rather noted scholar in Hebrew and such. Half of the people in this photo are cousins of mine. Next. Okay, every year, we would hold regularly social events, dinner dances and this and that. But once a year, the biggest event we had was Turkish night. And everybody would dress up in Turkish costumes, and we'd play Middle Eastern music, hire a Middle Eastern band who played the oud and all those things. And it was always our most popular evening. Next. Okay, 1920, the Jews, mainly from Salonika, a few other areas, they founded Temple Tifereth Israel, mostly Jews from Salonika. It was on Santa Barbara Boulevard at that time. Today, Santa Barbara Boulevard is Martin Luther King. In the 1970s, they moved to their present location on Wilshire Boulevard in Westwood, just about a block from Temple Sinai. Next. Okay, here's a photo of the inside of that synagogue, and notice the bima is in the middle. This is an old Sephardic tradition going back centuries. In fact, if you're in Israel, in the area around Galilee, if you look at some of the ancient synagogues there, they have the bima in the middle, and the congregation sits around the rabbi and the cantor as the service goes on. Originally, the men sat on one side and the women on the other side. On our road synagogue, we didn't have the bima in the middle, so the women sat in the back. Anyway, when we first moved to Wilshire Boulevard, we built it in the same style but larger, men on one side, women on the other. And then they had a meeting and discussed whether we can integrate our seating, and they overwhelmingly voted to integrate it. So, but there was still a small minority that wanted to have separate seating. So originally, most of the seats were integrated, men and women, but up in the upper right-hand corner, there was one area for men only, and in the left side, one area for women only. When our synagogue finally merged with them in 1993, that's the way it was. But as I've been going there over the last almost 30 years, those two little areas where separate men and women were got smaller and smaller, and eventually it disappeared. The whole thing is now integrated. Next. Okay, I was the archivist for the synagogue, and going through the archives, I found the minutes from the very first meeting. And the minutes went all the way up through the 1940s, and they were written in Ladino. So here is the very first page, responding to the calling of Messieurs Maldonado, Levi, and Jose. We don't pronounce that H. Jose Estrugo, etc., etc. We will start the Sephardic community of Los Angeles. However, there are two words in here that caught my eye. Look at the, let's see, the word domingo. It's the third line down. Domingo means Sunday in Spanish, but in Ladino, we don't call Sunday Domingo. That comes from the Latin word domine, which means holy, and Sunday is not a holy day to us. We call Sunday al-Hat, the first day of the week. That's Arabic for first. It's close to the Hebrew word echad. For some reason, we use the Spanish word, not the Ladino word for Sunday. And then as you go down, according to the calling of Maldonado, the word calling is llamada, but they spell the llamada with a double L. When you took Spanish in school, you learned that Y sound is spelt with a double L. Well, we don't do that. We spell it with a Y. So in two spots on this, they use the modern Spanish terminology and spelling. They were beginning to integrate. Next slide. Okay, and this is down the page. The official language from now on will be Spanish. Now look at the part written in Ladino. Look over at the last line, way over on the right side. There's something written in very, very small print. Obviously, it was written in later. It says, and English, and then there's another word that I can't read. It's too small. And English something. It looks like that was added later. Next. Then it goes on. The language of our board meeting will be Ladino, the language of Maimonides. Isn't that interesting? Maimonides. Except that all the scholars will tell you that Maimonides lived in Muslim Spain and spoke Arabic, and also lived about 300 years before the Ladino language evolved. However, here I have documentary proof that he spoke Ladino, don't I? Next. And this particular item, by coincidence, on the day that I found this document and I got to this page, our rabbi happened to walk into the library just as I reached this point. Mr. Nachmias made the motion to nominate Don Abraham Caraco as rabbi of the community with the wages of $1 a year. So the rabbi had just walked in at that point. I called him over and said, Rabbi, I got bad news for you. Anyway, next. Next slide. Okay. All right. It was declared that the active members of the Sephardi community pay dues of $1 per each person. I think the dues have been increased since then. Next. Okay, let's go into the culture. Okay, our language, we, as I mentioned at the beginning, we thought we spoke Spanish, but we had problems. Next. Okay, let's take that first word up there. When I went to Spain the first time, oh, by the way, somebody that I met there, I was speaking to him and he looks at me and says, you're talking like Cervantes. I was speaking a Spanish from the 15th century. Then I met some people there. We went into a little club, had a drink. There was a girl singer. She knew somebody at my table. She came and sat down next to me. And I'm very polite. I said, I enjoyed your singing. And she looked at me as if I'd said something obscene to her. Well, I didn't realize that the word sentir means to hear or to listen in Ladino. In Spanish, Castilian Spanish, it means to feel. So I won't bother translating the rest of that for you. My sister, look at the word echar, to throw. We use the same word, but we have slang, as every language does. And to go to bed, we say, throw yourself in bed, échate en la cama. My sister was teaching in a school that was mostly Hispanic kids. One of her students was ill one day. The mother was called in to pick her up. And my mother says, take her home and put her to bed. Échala en la cama. Well, the mother went down to the principal and said, the teacher just told me to throw my daughter in the garbage. Because in Mexico, echar slang is short for echan la basura, throw in the garbage. Oh, well. My cousin was in Mexico. She wanted to buy a skirt. She wanted to know if the skirt included a belt. So she said, esta fustan tiene cushak. Well, she didn't know that the Spanish word for a skirt is a falda, not a fustan. Fustan is the Greek word. A belt in Spanish is cinturón, but she said cushak, which is Turkish. The guy in the store had no idea what she was talking about. The word for a fork. By the way, the fork didn't exist in Spain until after 1492, so we didn't have a Spanish word for it. When it was introduced, the Greeks called it a piroñi, so we just called it pirón. I was going to school in Mexico. After class, would go out and drink beer and tell jokes. So I picked up a fork and I made a pun about the dictator of Argentina, Juan Perón. Nobody laughed at my joke. I couldn't figure out why. Later I learned. Another time I was in Guatemala. There was a man from Rhodes who knew my father there. And one thing Sephardics have in common with Ashkenazis is if anything's going on, there's always a lot of food there. So he called around a bunch of Sephardics, put out a lot of food. They offered me more food. I says, no, I'm full. Yame arti. They all started laughing and laughing. What are they laughing at? Sometime later, I was attending the LA Opera. They were putting on a Spanish zarzuela with Placido Domingo. In the zarzuela, there's one point where somebody asked him something and he says, no, llame arti. He said it exactly as I did. But the titles that came on above the screen said, I'm fed up. So I'm full, I'm fed up. Okay. My cousin going to school in Mexico. If one thing that we do and also the Mexicans do, if there's a word they don't know, they just take the English word and put an A or an O at the end of it. He was playing poker and he had the winning hand. So we wanted to say, this pot is mine. He said, esta puta es mío. Well, a puta in Spanish is a prostitute. Again, every one of us, of us Sephardic kids, took Spanish in high school or college. Every Spanish class regularly had vocabulary tests. Every one of us made the same mistakes. Sometimes I wonder about the teachers of the Spanish classes. They give a class period 1 and some kid in class says sandia, says carpus instead of sandia for watermelon, or ahat instead of domingo for Sunday. The next period, she's teaching another Spanish class, another kid makes the same mistake over and over again. And there's a whole list of words where this came up, and every one of us made the same mistakes. Next. Okay, we had a newspaper here in Los Angeles, La Vara, printed with the Hebrew alphabet, but in Ladino. It lasted through the 1920s into the 1930s. Next. Okay, let's look at some of our foods. Oh, when I was in high school, and I met all these Ashkenazi kids who ate, they ate gefilte fish and such. We ate other things. One day, yeah, hold this slide, I'll come to it in a second. One day, I had an Armenian friend. The first day I walked into his house smells like my house. His mother was cooking the same stuff that my mother was making. And here are a few things that my mother used to make, but each one of these I bought here. The top one is rice pudding. You see it in your markets all the time. We called it sütlaç. That's the Turkish word, but we didn't buy it at the market. Our mothers made it at home. And they always put cinnamon on top. And many of the mothers put the cinnamon in the shape of a Star of David. My mother used to put the cinnamon in the shape of our initials. So I knew which one was mine, and my sisters knew which one was theirs. Down at the bottom left, what we call burecas. I bought this. There are a few Argentine bakeries in town where they make empanadas, almost identical to ours. These are a little larger than what my mother made. One of our women, who was somewhat of a scholar, she died years ago, she said that when we lived in Spain, we called these empanadas. When we moved to Turkey, the Turks were calling them borek. So we took the Turkish word and put a little suffix at the end to make them sound Spanish. On the right is what you get at a Greek restaurant called a spanakopita. There is a farmer's market not far from here. Every Friday, there's a Middle Eastern guy who sells Middle Eastern food, and I buy spanakopitas from him. But my mother used to make them, and we call them ujaldres, and they are spinach in fila dough, which everybody pronounces philo, but we pronounce it fila. Next. Okay, what about our music? A number of old Spanish ballads. By the way, the women were always singing these things, and I, as a teenager, ignored them. I listened to popular music. It was some time before I learned that we were singing songs that went back hundreds of years. So just a few examples. There's a ballad called Jerineldo. Jerineldo was a knight who was, let's go back to that first one.
Let's see if I can go back. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, you can leave it here, it's all right.
Okay. Yes, I hit the button, I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyway, Jerineldo, it's a long ballad. It's got, 20 verses, but Jerineldo is a knight, and he's having an affair with the king's daughter, the princess, and they got to do it secretly. And then the king comes in, finds them together, puts his sword between them. They wake up and see the sword, and, oh my God, we've been found out. And then so he runs down to the garden, and the king meets him there and says, why are you blushing? He says, oh, the flowers, they smell so nice, I'm blushing. And the king says, that's not why you're blushing. You were with the princess. And then he admits it. And the king, and the song ends, well, here is your punishment. She shall be your wife and you shall be her husband. The other song that was in the previous thing, Una tarde de verano, you know, a good old thing about the damsel in distress and the knight in shining armor. Una tarde en verano, an afternoon in the summer, the knight is going down in the Moorish quarter and he sees a girl crying next to a fountain. Why are you crying, my poor little Moorish girl? I'm not Moorish, I'm Spanish. And I was kidnapped and brought down here. Oh, said the knight, you come back with me, get on my horse, I'll take you up north. So they get on, and then as they get close to his area, she looks around and says, this place looks familiar to me. This is where I used to live. And he says, this is where I live, and my sister was kidnapped. And then it ends, he goes to his mother with the girl and says, I was going to bring you back my bride, but instead I brought you back your daughter. And there's a whole lot of songs like that. Then there's a whole lot of little comical songs, a lot of which were obviously created later after we left Spain because they got Turkish things. This one here I use as an example. Bre Sarika Bre. Bre is oh, or something like that. Oh, Sarita, oh. Bring me a little water. Oh, Sarita, oh. Chica y hermosuras. Petite and beautiful. Petite and delightful. I'm going to buy you shoes from Uncapan and boots from Jebarni. Well, Uncapan and Jebarni are areas, upper class areas where the high class shops are in Istanbul. So even though we're in Rhodes, we are, you know, we're singing about a place in Istanbul. Next. Okay, some of our superstitions. Next. Okay, there is Aruda, and here is a branch of Aruda that I just plucked just before this thing started. Aruda is a very fragrant plant, a pungent plant, and it's used in all kinds of activities. One thing, when a child is born, it is put on the chest of the child, and it keeps away the evil eye. And it's used for good luck in different areas. I was watching a video that a Sephardic girl had posted on the internet, and she was interviewing somebody, and she said Aruda was used in abortions. And the girl who posted it, I know, so I called her and I said, I never heard that it was used in abortions. We use it to ward off evil things. And she says, no, this guy, she told me they use it in abortions. So I looked it up in a book about Sephardic customs, and that was correct. I had never learned it because the women never told me that. They told me about the other part of Aruda. Next slide. Here is the Oju Malo. Well, this is the thing that, another thing that keeps away the evil eye, or the Ain Hara. The Ashkenazis also have something similar to the evil eye, and they have various ways of avoiding it and keeping it out. This is also it's hung on the wall. When we first got cars, we would hang this from our rear view mirror. It's put on the chests of little babies also, just like the Aruda. Okay, next. I think that was the end.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Okay.
I'm going to put this on so we can see everybody here. And there were some notes. Someone was sending us notes on chat, Judy Cohen, about the song Gironeldo. She had some extra information about it.
Oh, I learned the song from her. She's one of the great singers of Sephardic songs.
Oh, right. I think, Judy, I believe, I understand from maybe with Sherry Schwartz, you do presentations also of music, Sephardic music. You can open your microphone. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Thanks, Art. You know what? I always learn something new from you every time after all these years. So I checked in today partly out of loyalty and partly because I was interested in the service, and I listened to the whole service and it was lovely. So thank you so much. But also because I actually learn from you every time. So I just wrote in Gerineldo. It's really interesting. It actually goes back, the story, not the song, but the story goes back to Charlemagne, and probably his scribe, who became his biographer, and maybe Charlemagne's daughter. But I mean, none of that is actually in the ballad. And the funny thing about it is that the original ending, they don't get married.
Oh.
In the happier version, they get married, and then you say that may you have que tengas el mazal de Gerineldo. May you have the good luck, you have the mazal of Gerineldo. But originally, and even in some of the Jewish versions, Gerineldo says to the king, it's exactly as Art says, you know, he sleeps with the princess, the king goes, he hears something, he says, oh, either somebody is sleeping with my daughter or someone's robbing the castle, I better go check. So he goes to check, he sees them, he puts his sword between the two sleeping young people so they know that he's seen them. They get up the next morning and the princess says, oh no, my father's seen us, what are we gonna do? And Gerineldo says, I'm out of here. He doesn't protect her, he's not chivalrous, he jumps out the window. And the daughter says to him, just tell my father if he sees you that you're smelling the flowers. Ha ha ha, smelling the flowers, cutting the flowers. So the king comes out, and just like Art says, he says, hi, Gerineldo, what are you doing so early in the morning? He says, I've been out, ha ha ha, cutting flowers. And the king says, no, it's okay, like, let's not waste time. I know where you've been, but you can marry my daughter. And Gerineldo says, you know what? No, because I have sworn an oath to only marry a virgin. And thanks to my tender ministrations last night, your daughter, the princess, no longer qualifies. So there's no mazal de Gerineldo there. But in the short version, he just says, oh yeah, sure. And then they say, otro día en la mañana, las ricas bodas se armarán. Otro día en la mañana, las ricas bodas se armarán. But actually, the Jews of Rhodes and Salonika, they lost this song very early on. I don't think it's been documented in the Eastern Mediterranean. I don't think it is, like, since the very early 20th century at the latest. It's really Moroccans who kept it alive.
Okay, good. By the way, Judith's singing group was known as Gerineldo.
Yeah, we called ourselves Gerineldo for the good luck part, not the other part.
I saw Isaac Norman, you clicked on the hand up. Did you have something to ask? If you do, you can unmute the mic. Anyone else have any questions? Just click on the, I guess, unmute the mic, but don't rush them all at once. That way we'll have a little control. Okay. Well, I thought this was fascinating, Art. And, you know, I knew middle school Spanish, so I'm following as best I can some of the words here. And it makes sense. It makes sense. You know, I'm sometimes I look at Sidurim prayer books that are Sephardic prayer books, and some of them, if they were printed out of Amsterdam, they were by Sephardic printers. They were doing for the Sephardic prayer, and they have notations in Ladino script. And so I've seen prayer books with Yiddish, an early Yiddish, side by side with now one that say Ladino, one says La'az, and I'm not sure. La'az is usually an explanation for any foreign language, so I'm not sure if it meant a Italian or something else. So they look different from each other, but that was I see that, I've come across that.
One thing recently, one of my hobbies is where there's a Ladino word that differs from the Castilian word. I like to look up its origin. And I found a whole lot of them are Portuguese, many are Greek and Turkish, but the word chapines, which means shoes, it's obviously related to scarpine, the Italian word, but it wasn't I couldn't find it anywhere, and I mentioned it to somebody, And they said, well, you just got back from Spain. In Granada, didn't you see the street called Chapineria? So I went to Google Maps. I went to Granada. I wrote in Chapineria, and there was a street there named Chapineria, which obviously is where the old shoemakers used to be. So I do a lot of this.
I would also say that, in that video, as I told you, that I had at the beginning from David Raphael, and right in the middle, there's an interview with a Dr. Jose Nissim, who was very active in establishing Sephardic Education Center. And the rabbi later, the rabbi who was at the Sephardic Temple, Rabbi Buskila, worked with them. I think he's back in LA, but with some other context right now. But we have one other interesting connection with the Sephardic Temple, which is that at the entrance to the main sanctuary, you will see a plaque marking the building of the main sanctuary in 1952, and the rabbi officiating is Rabbi Jacob Ott, who was at Beth El, and then he went to the Sephardic synagogue. I was there for many, many years on Wilshire.
Yeah.
So that's our contact or our connection.
Yeah, he was Ashkenazi, but he converted. He became more Sephardic than the rest of us.
Right. That's a good move. That's a good move. Well, it's like in Jerusalem, all the Arabs, the old Jerusalem spoke Yiddish. The peddlers would go around, alte Sachen, alte Shia. And my wife's grandparents were Yemenite. They spoke Yiddish also. Everybody spoke everybody spoke Yiddish and Ladino as well as Hebrew. And it was from all sides. Well, I want to thank you so very much for the presentation. I invite everybody to stay tuned next week. Joe Ben Lulu going to talk about North Africa, Morocco, which is also Spanish influence, but has a different flavor also because of the North African tone. And then I'll talk the following week about the Jews of Yemen and their history and culture, very, very different from the rest of the Jewish world of its time. And then, Carmen, you're getting us the Jamaican Jewish community, and it will be in September. We're going to get the details for you. High Holidays is coming up. We are going to be online, going to do this Zoom version, and then we're going to try to have both on Facebook and on YouTube. We're going to find out the technology, get them streaming at both at the same time. And if anyone else wants to continue on, Yoni, you want to take it from here? You want to take the program from here? You can unmute. Yeah, Yoni, you want to take it from here if anybody wants to continue discussion afterwards?
Oh, there I am. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I'll make you host. Art, I want to thank you very much from everybody. It was so nice. I'm glad. I appreciate that you took your time to be with us. And let me do this, Yoni.
I've seen the cantors from New York do a concert at the Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam. And I now understand why that synagogue is so special to this day. Is there anything else left of the